talk about, or just ask the question generally, why are you interested in work-life balance? And you can talk about how you manage it yourself, if you like, and then we'll move into...
I don't, that's the problem.
Well, we can talk about that. We can talk about...
You do, you start yourself
No, my work-life balance is very good.
semi-retired, it's excellent.
Constant struggle. Well, it's it's not something you just correct once, is it? It's something
It's a constant evolving...
And you've got it sussed, you only work 2 days now.
And then we'll move into compassionate communication, and there's other, just, chip in and how it works.
You've got a funny knobby bit, haven't you?
Oh yeah, my knobby bit's funny.
And what website do you want me to...
I think this time give the accountancy practice, but I think beyond this we might be moving into a different one, down to earth retreats, if we get our act together and get it up and running. So, yeah.
Theaccountancypractice.co.uk.
Yeah.
No, .com.
Is it? No, it's not,
.com.
Yeah, .com. Yeah.
No.
Sorry.
No. So work-life balance, that's interesting.
Have a think. 20 seconds, and I'll go on to think.
Well, that's important to the practice that we look at the client stuff, isn't it? That's where the link is, you see.
I don't know what you just said.
It's important to the practice that we look at the work-life balance. Let's take them into consideration as well. Do you not? You have a clue what I'm
It's
talking
talk and talk. You're not going to domesticate that. What's going on?
Took me breakfast.
We've got John and Helen Froggett with us, hot-footing it from a business meeting.
about. Yes, over at Stansted, Mount Fitchett.
Useful to network and learn from other people in those events.
We've had 4 this week.
Wow.
I know.
You have learnt and networked a lot.
I know, because sometimes some of them monthly, some are fortnightly, some are weekly. So every now and again they all clash on the same week. So it's we're a bit phased at the moment.
I'm very tired.
Goodness knows what John's going to say. I'm a bit worried about that.
Let's find out, shall we? Oh, I like it. I like being on edge a little bit. It's too safe sometimes. So we're here to talk about work-life balance and compassionate communication in particular. But let's rewind a bit back to work-life balance. It's a hard balance to get right. Why are you so interested in it?
Well, clearly my work-life balance this week is not in balance.
But it is an ongoing process, isn't it?
It's always an ongoing process. Things change, and I think it's very difficult to get a work-life balance. We all have pressures, we all have things we have to do, places we have to go. But I think if you can make those pressures into choices rather than things you have to do, the balance of your life becomes a little bit easier. And I'm fortunate because I'm now in working only 2 days a week, but then again I'm really, really old, and I've got a nice work-life balance. I don't have really any major stresses in my life, and if I do have stresses in my life, I kind of treat them in a way that they don't become stresses anymore. So, but work-life balance is a constant evolving, it's like a river. It flows, and sometimes it takes a bend where you don't expect it to, so you cut out a new direction and off you go with it.
And sometimes it might be more work, more life. Getting that equilibrium 100% of the time is
very
impossible.
difficult. But I think the important thing with all of this stuff, is to make this the things that you have to do, make them into choices rather than actually pressures.
And try and limit the things you have to do
Like
as well.
breakfasts.
We covered previously, didn't we? The how to say no to requests and the importance of doing that for your own sanity. And meditation, something John's spoken about before as well, and taking 10 minutes to be quiet if you can, to centre yourself before your day.
And there are lots of apps that you can do that with now.
Yeah.
That you just 10 minutes, just sitting up in bed, you can do that. Let's move on to then compassionate communication. So, what is compassionate communication?
Shall I?
Yes.
Compassionate. I'm quite into compassionate communication. Basically, broadly, because it's quite a vast subject, but broadly, it's being present in the moment when someone's talking to you. So, if I'm listening to you, Leigh, instead of gosh, you're ever going to finish, or I have some preconceived idea of what it is you're saying to me, so my mind's flitting around, I actually listen. Very much a Samaritans type thing, if I'm honest. You're kind of completely present at the time, you're listening, you're fully engaged with that person, and people like being listened to. And if you can be fully engaged with someone and you're in a way you can reflect back what they've said, so there's no misunderstanding of what's being said between the two of you, I think it's incredibly important and very nice for the person with whom you are engaging. But also, more importantly, I think that if you can show compassion when you're listening to somebody, then any requests that you may have can also be listened to. So basically, listening without judgment and just being fully present in the moment.
And not thinking, oh, what am I going to say next? What, you know,
Yeah.
this, oh, you've said something, and I'm thinking, oh, well, I've got
Exactly
an anecdote
it.
on that.
No, it's exactly it. It's not what you think. You're making no judgments. You're making no preconceived ideas. You're listening to what they have to say, and taking that on board. And how often have we ever been somewhere where someone turns out, well, he was a really nice guy, or she was a nice lady, and really you never said anything, but you just listened. And
Well, listening is a skill, isn't it? I mean,
It's
lots
a
of
skill.
people are awful at listening. I'm very conscious of
Yeah.
listening now. Lots of
Yeah, like you
people
just jumped in
I
there.
know, I did. But lots of people are
Absolutely.
awful. They don't listen.
They
and,
don't.
And you can tell when people aren't listening.
Very much so, yeah.
Not just from what they say, but from their body language.
Yeah, very
So
much
it's
so.
keeping an eye on all of that.
So it's very important. I think that can also cut down. I think some people refer to it as non-violent communication. So you're being compassionate, you're listening, you're taking on, no matter what the circumstance is. Everyone's got a story behind it. So you're not going into any situation where you're judgmental. So instantly you see somebody doing something, you've instantly judged what's going on. You don't know what's going on. You can't be sure. So you're going in compassionately and just being present without any preconceived ideas. Very difficult. Well worth trying though.
Can I, devil's advocate on this, is that if you stop and listen to some people, they will go, you can be overwhelmed by some people because they will go on and on and on. You do need to do a kind of little bit of protection.
Yeah.
I think you need to understand how you're feeling and take time out to think about how you're going to react. There's quite specific differences between dealing with a potentially conflicting situation where someone says something that you're feeling uncomfortable with and you've got to react, or when someone's just boring you to death. And yes, if you are learning to not interrupt and be attentive, it's such a compliment for the person receiving it that they might just be like the floodgates are opening, and then you could feel a bit uncomfortable shutting them down. I've got a tip for that though. Whilst they're talking, you could be then thinking, what can I ask to get them onto a slightly different subject? Because when you're interrupting someone who's been talking for quite a while, it's really uncomfortable for them to suddenly be interrupted and then not talking. It's really stark when you just take over or someone else takes over. That, was I boring everyone? So you can be kind and use compassion and say, that was interesting what you were saying about such and such. How do you feel about da-da-da? And it just redirects onto a subject that might be of more interest to the people in the group or indeed to yourself. And so that's a subtle way of doing it. So the key is to redirect but let them carry on talking. But when you've got a conflicting opinion with someone, that's when it can be really difficult, or when someone attacks you or you feel attacked. And that's the hardest time to actually listen. And so the stakes are really high, aren't they? Because someone's saying something to you that's contentious. They may have taken a while to think about whether they dare say anything, plucking up the courage. When they say it, they might not say it all that tactfully. And as soon as you recognise there's something here that you're getting your back up again about, that's when you've got to sort of start to use these techniques. So really stop thinking, how dare they say that? What people in glass houses and all the rest of it. Just sitting, looking, thinking, gosh, how do I feel about this? Is there a grain of truth in this? Is there a lot of truth in this? Have I been trying to get away with this for long? Sometimes the way we act strongly indicates that we actually think there's a bit of truth in it.
And I suppose it's listening to the content of what's been said. I remember somebody once saying to me, when you're arguing with someone, very quickly into an argument, you're arguing about the way the other person is arguing. So the subject, whatever the source of conflict was, is gone. Now it's, well, you always say
and
that,
don't speak to me like that,
Yes.
and you never listen to me, and all these mud-throwing things. So simply the first thing, once the comment's been made, is to try to repeat back what you think they've said. You can say, I can see, rather than you do, I can see that this is obviously a subject that's very important to you, and I'm really sorry that it's come to this, and thanks for bringing it up. From what I understand, you feel that I da-da-da-da, or you feel whatever it is. Repeat back. That really diffuses people so much with their anger. Sometimes people actually retract what they said. I've had, they go, well, I didn't mean it quite like that. But it was what they said. and you've then repeated, because they've already scaling it back a bit. It wasn't quite what I meant. What I meant was, okay, so may I ask a couple of questions about this? Or I need to double check what you mean. So you can ask questions. So the first thing is to listen, show you've heard by repeating it back, maybe ask some questions, and then say, so how are we going to move forward on this? What would you prefer my reaction to be in this situation? Or what would you like the company to do with this when it happens again? So it's really step by step. It's very simple, but it's ever so effective. And I think if we all tried to do it more often, it'd be a happier place.
And lots of these skills are reminding me of assertiveness training. There
Yes.
was a fad for assertiveness training many, many years ago.
Yes.
And lots of what you're saying about expressing how it makes you feel, repeating back, it's along those lines, isn't it?
It is.
It's not aggressive.
I've been training assertiveness for 30 years, and I have noticed that the word compassion is much more in vogue now. People don't use the word assertiveness. Even empathy is not quite as popular as it used to be. So I'm now training people in compassionate communication, which, as you correctly said, is assertiveness.
And how do you practice these skills? Because if you want to use them, you don't want the first time you use them to be in a source of conflict. So are there kind of scenarios that you can run through?
Oh, we just start them on the simple ones, the things that aren't that problematic, the things that you think this could go really wrong if it's handled badly. Repeating back in any situation is so helpful, because sometimes we haven't actually got the right end of the stick, and that can prevent any misunderstandings happening there. So poor communication is the source of trouble in businesses and in home life all around the world. So just taking a bit of time to listen without thinking what you're going to say next, exactly what you said.
And it buys you time as well, doesn't it? Because
exactly.
Sometimes, you just need a moment to just calm down before it escalates.
Yeah, and then, because we have a choice about how we react, even if something's put to us badly. And I think when people realise they've been heard, it diffuses their irritation with the situation massively. That's, in itself, that's just so helpful.
And this is a technique that you can use in scenarios, personal scenarios, work scenarios.
I use it all the time with Helen. I'm joking.
She's using it back.
Yeah, exactly right. We never get anywhere really, was I? Yeah, you can use it anyway, and it's quite important really, because I think that also that I read somewhere that someone said violent situations are just people's lack of ability to be able to express their feelings, and I think they're probably right. So I think that everybody wants some compassion in their life, peace, love and happiness, and I think if you can start the ball rolling with a degree of compassion when you're talking to somebody, I think that mirrors back.
I mentioned earlier, I've got a teenager, so conflict is a regular, an hourly almost occurrence. So something like this.
That's a
really
perfect
there you go.
scenario
Let us
for
know
you.
how you get on.
Perfect
See how it
scenario.
goes. If it can work with a 14-year-old, it can work with anyone.
I think you find it could do. We've got the techniques. Yeah, I think you can do. Compassion.
Compassion. Thank you. Theaccountancypractice.com is where people can find out more about this, and hopefully we'll be back in
love to see you in a month's time.
Lovely
Brilliant.
to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Thanks, Leigh.
How long have you been married now?
Oh, 10, 12 years.
8 months.
Oh, it's 8 months.
So, you're thinking your anniversary.
Yeah,
must
something
be.
like that, yeah.
I don't say it wouldn't last that.
Not very.
Lovely to see you.
You too.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.